Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back. We begin our conversation this morning with representatives from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology. We have with us in studio Chief Executive Officer Dian Maheia. Good morning.
Good morning.
We also have with us the Chief Education Officer Yolanda Gongora. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're discussing this morning the scheduled reopening of schools across the country, today being October 4th. I would want to think, first of all, that there is some apprehension on the part of parents and other stakeholders in the education sector insofar as this date being set in the height of the third wave of COVID-19. Let's begin there, C.E.O.
Okay, I think the first thing for me to clarify is that the October 4th date was set in accordance with the Ministry of Health when the Pfizer vaccine was being rolled out, right? And so the goal then was to be able to allow the 6-week period in between the arrival of Pfizer, the imminent rollout of the vaccine, the first shot wait period, second shot wait period. So that's when October 4th was set as a deadline. And we agreed then in August that we would respect that deadline and that it would be after that or on and after that date that we would be able to say to schools when it would be safe to return. I really want to highlight the fact that for us, safety is paramount, but flexibility is key because we recognize, the two ends of the spectrum here with how people feel about the students returning to school. So I think the key thing for us to start with this morning is the fact that starting today, schools who have met the green light criteria will be able to begin to return in small groups for hybrid education. Schools are not open across the country today, right? So there's a little bit of a difference, and I recognize that this is new, and it is new because this has never been done before because we've never lived this before, right?
Are there any schools that you expect are opening their gates to students today?
I believe there may be a few.
Okay.
We did review, we had between Thursday and Friday, Chief has the statistics there. We had quite a few applications. Many of them really did meet all the criteria. What it seems though, what we've gotten from many of them is that they wanted to know that they would meet the criteria so that they can begin when they're ready. Not that today their gates will be open. Okay.
Let's talk about those numbers, those who have met the criteria so far.
Okay, we had 63 applications and 48 met the requirements. From those 48, we had across the country out of 675, roughly 675 schools, be it primary, pre-primary, secondary, the adult and continuing education schools, universities and tertiary institutions. So that's the approximate number we have of schools. So you're speaking about 48 schools, maybe 7% of our schools that have been given the green light. And again, what C.E.O. said, it does not mean that they all start today. Some of them will decide if it's Thursday, Wednesday, next week. I know one of the principals emailed me yesterday and said that they will open until next week, and it will be for the students who are not performing well. So it's not overall for all the kids. In some of the preschools, it would be on a rotation, Monday and Wednesday, or Thursday and Tuesday and Thursday. And it all depends on the permission granted by the parents, how they're going to manage with the children in the schools.
For the benefit of our viewers, explain to us what is hybrid education and the context in which students will be returning to school for this particular experience.
Sure. When we talk about hybrid education, what we're talking about is something that's blended. It's mixed. There's a little bit of on-site learning, which is like what we've been calling face-to-face, which is the students are physically there in the classroom, the teacher is there in the classroom. There's also a little bit of distance learning or remote learning or online learning. Those are the terms that have been used a lot. So the distance or remote learning can be the use of the packages or the use of the internet for the synchronous or the asynchronous classes. The classes where they have to log in because the teacher is talking now, or the sessions where the teacher uploads a video and they log in and watch it afterwards, or the teacher sends something by WhatsApp, for example, and then the parent can watch it later on. That's considered remote or distance learning. So when we're talking about hybrid, what we're saying is that the school would offer a combination of those things. So just now, for example, where the chief mentioned that in some schools they're saying the students will come in on alternate days, what they're saying is, for example, your child might come in on Monday and Wednesday, and on Tuesday and Thursday be given some form of remote learning activity. And then your child is there on Tuesday and Thursday, and it's the same content that will be taught. It just switches. So whenever we talk about hybrid, that's what we're saying, that there's a balance. And the balance needs to happen, especially with the on-site learning, because many of our classrooms are physically smaller and they're not capable of holding as many students as they would pre-pandemic protocol, right? So now we're being told that there needs to be 3-foot spacing between the students. The classrooms can't accommodate that. So instead, the schools are kind of dividing. On Friday, one principal spoke to us of having a group A and a group B. You know, so they're rotating the students in that way.
And these were ideas that schools have been playing with for quite a while because they have large classroom sizes.
Exactly.
I don't want to miss the point here to ask, what about IT vet schools?
We have 2 IT vets that applied.
Yes.
So, and the others are considering the actual date that they want to, particularly because they deal with practical subjects. So they are in the process of finalizing their agreements with their teachers and the practices or the practical activities that they'll be doing before they submit their application.
Let me ask, in terms of today being set and the option now being left to the respective schools to determine whether or when they will reopen, how does that compare against the ongoing vaccination campaign for students of ages 12 to 17?
Vaccination campaign continues. It's critically important. We need to continue to get our students vaccinated. We have been constantly working, in collaboration with Ministry of Health and Wellness. They've been really supportive. We have tried to be supportive of their efforts because what we recognize is that obviously the higher the number of vaccinated students in a classroom, the lower the transmission rate of the virus will be. So we have even, over the past few weeks, worked with them to ask some schools and to see where if they can not have synchronous classes or not to have classes on certain days. Some schools have done that in order to allow students the leeway or the flexibility to go to be vaccinated. I want to explain that the criteria that we're using for the green lighting, there are 5 criteria. The first thing that we look at is the geographic location of the school, obviously in relation to the COVID numbers, right? The second thing is the teacher vaccination rate for the school. The third is the student vaccination rate. And obviously in primary school, for example, that will always be much lower, but in some schools it will play a higher role. The fourth is the physical readiness of the campus to accommodate the students when they return. And the fifth criteria, and actually this is the hardest one to measure, and so in some ways it's almost the most important, is the community context. How much does the community need for the school to be reopened? Not for everyone.
How do you quantify that?
You can't. Really.
So let's put that into some material examples, so to speak. So you're looking at the south side of Belize City, for instance. We've identified Belize as the epicenter of the pandemic at the moment. So we're looking at south side Belize City. You have a number of primary schools and a number of high schools in this side of the community, in this side of the city, sorry. And you have some students who are vaccinated, some who are not, depending on where they are with that process. You're also looking at the fact that prior to this date being set, there was a push by the Ministry of Education to have as many schools physically be prepared, hand wash stations and all these other stuff to retrofit to allow for students to return. So if we look at that, what would you say the biggest challenge would be in terms of any of these schools on the south side to be able to open their doors?
For them right now, it's the COVID numbers in their geographic location, right? Because we do see where the community context tells us that they need to have their students back. But right now, because of the high numbers, it's going to be harder for them to be back, right? Because of course, then they have more people out, and you know, the virus moves with the bodies. So
this, however, is against the backdrop of perhaps experiencing the highest dropout rate on the south side of Belize City, and it's compounded.
Exactly.
Well, I guess
they're right there. That is a perfect summation of the challenges that we face, because we see the need to try to get the students back in, and we also recognize the tremendous health risks that exist.
And that's why I guess the question is, how do these when you look at the 5 criteria that you just outlined, how is it weighted? Is it most important that there's no outbreak? Is it most important that there's community context? What do you use as your measure?
Flexibility. Honestly, you know, we've been sitting, we've been looking at these contexts. On Friday, we kept going back. We were calling, emailing, sending messages, trying to ask questions. You know, what is it that you're proposing? How would you do this? How many students are you planning to bring in at a time? Anything that wasn't made clear in the application forms. Because in some cases, for example, what we see is that what may be most important is the physical readiness of the campus.
Right.
Because if the physical, all the protocols are there, if prepared to be followed, you know, that may have to take precedence, because you look at the community context and you realize how much it's needed for the students to return. So really, you know, there is no, there's not a cutoff percentage. We had a principal say, so if my percentage is low, should I not even bother to apply? And we said, no, that's not it. And we did. This has been a process, right? We kept thinking, okay, how should we approach this? And then we realized that while the top 4 can be quantified, the 5th can't. And the 5th is really, really important.
And does the 5th criteria, when you talk about community context, does that include parents? Because parents are, in fact, on both ends of the spectrum. Some are fully vaccinated, their children are vaccinated, but they don't want them to go back to school because of the wave. And the other end, where parents are adamant that their children should go back to the classroom. How do you advise schools when they have met all the criteria, but they don't have the parents' buy-in?
Really, we haven't needed to advise them. They have been in dialogue with their parents on their own. And we've had schools that have met all the criteria. They really have. They have a plan for a safe return, but their parents have said, no, we are not ready. And so the schools have then chosen to say, we will wait a few more weeks before we try again. You know?
We were also encouraged with the number of teacher vaccination. In some instances, they were 100% for majority of the schools that applied, as well as the student vaccination. They were above 60%. So that was encouraging for the schools that applied. So I believe they considered those factors when they made the decision to submit the application.
Just out of curiosity, with the October 1st regulations, government buildings, which will include government schools, must have vaccinated persons?
Actually, schools are not considered in that mandate.
So the teachers aren't mandated there?
No. Teachers are expected to follow the same be vaccinated or present a test every 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was one of the questions. The other thing I want to come back to was looking at the vaccination for children as well. What do we know so far from the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine? What percentage of the target population has been vaccinated?
We're at, I think our last numbers that we saw are something around 24,000 who have been vaccinated, of an overall that's about 58,000. So
just about half, a little
we're
under half.
almost at halfway. Yeah.
And is the level of vaccination, the vaccination rate, is it promising that you'll be able to get the majority of this student population vaccinated?
I think that this is a good reflection of the past month's work, definitely. I think the same way our teacher vaccination rate is now somewhere close to 90%, I think the fact that within just the past few weeks, the vaccination, there have been so many Pfizer vaccines given to the 12 to 17-year-olds, that's very encouraging. I do want to say, though, that we are not saying that a student cannot return to on-site schooling if he or she is not vaccinated. Okay? Our goal is, we do not have a vaccination mandate. What we do have, though, is a mask mandate. And I need to say that because what we have seen in other countries, what even the preliminary studies are showing is that wearing your mask properly, consistently, is key to reducing transmission, especially in schools. So I know that there are many adults who are saying, oh, the children can't keep their masks on. And, you know, our April and May experience actually showed us that schools were successful in establishing and using the protocols and the routines with the children. Looking at what is happening in other schools across the world tells us that the students can learn. I think this is a case where in many cases the adults are harder to teach than the children. You know, the mask mandate is critical, and we do have a mask mandate for all our schools.
Over 6, the age?
Yes, but actually even the little ones are able to wear their masks, you know, and the teachers are understanding, I think, of how to help them.
Let's go back a bit. Of the 60 some odd schools that applied to reopen today or going forward, how much of them were preschools? How much of them were primary and secondary schools?
We had preschools, 19 preschools, 21 primary schools. This is for the ones that were given the green light, not the 63. 4 secondary schools, 2 IT vets, and 1 adult and continuing education, secondary. So those were the breakdown for the number of schools that were accepted to open.
So I know that parents definitely have a lot of questions, but let's bring this to the teacher part now. What's the consultation been with the teachers union, and how much buy-in do we have from teachers at this point to go back to hybrid learning?
I think it would be difficult for me to speak for all the teachers, obviously. We have kept the teachers union abreast of what has been happening. You know, the October 4th deadline was no secret, you know, that date that was set. And so we have continued, you know, our engagement back and forth with the ministry and with the team of stakeholders, sharing the information with them. Really what we've tried to do here is to stick to our commitment that we made to the general public, you know, at the end of August, and try to make sure that we are doing something in a way that is gradual, that it's measured with the, again, I say, the reality that safety is paramount here.
So let me go back. The April and May experience that you had, it was primarily the entire classes going back face to face.
No, it was still phased.
For those who opened?
It was still, yes, yes.
Because
the same concept where they would say which groups they wanted to bring back and how they would bring them back.
But the challenge with hybrid for teachers is that they teach twice. So if there is a half population, half the classroom that doesn't want to, the parents don't want them to go back, they will stay strictly online or get distance learning. And then you have half the classroom that does go back to face-to-face. Your teacher is then executing that duty twice for two different populations.
That absolutely is one of the hardest things. And I think that is why some of the schools are saying that they will continue doing the distance learning, because they haven't yet figured out a way that they would be able to manage the hybrid efficiently, you know. And we don't.
But they must offer both. I mean, your decision to reopen is based on hybrid learning. So it won't be, hybrid. I open my school and, you know, I won't offer distance or online anymore.
Because there needs to be always a way to accommodate everyone, right? And that's where it's really, really difficult. We don't have the technology in place to, for example, and this would be the ideal, to be able to set up in the classrooms, right? Where you have the necessary equipment to stream what the teacher is teaching, so that we can be in like this, right? We're sitting here talking, the teacher is teaching, and you can be at home and you can be watching. And I think that's going to be a difficult place. It is a very real challenge.
Has there been, sorry, go ahead. Has there been any objection from teachers with respect to the whole concept of hybrid learning, and, as Marlene said, having to repeat the same lessons twice?
Our teachers are smart. I think that they are figuring out ways to plan effectively, so that they're still, so it's one lesson plan that you're executing, whether it's live or it's distance. You know, and I think they're figuring it out. I mean, I don't know, Chief, have we gotten anything?
Not from them directly, but one of the things that we did identify and we worked on is reducing the number of learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes are not the ones from pre-COVID. We have reduced them across the board in primary schools. In secondary schools, a number of them have reduced the number of subjects. And again, they have reduced the number of contacts, but emphasizing on the core subjects, which is the literacy and the mathematics is important. So that's one of the things that the teachers are doing the best to accommodate, rather than thinking of how difficult it is. A challenge. And they do state that it's a challenge, particularly when the parents don't pick up the packages, tracking the students, finding where they are, and trying to see how they could get the assistance from the Ministry of Education to track the students. So that's one of the areas that again needs for assistance from the community to help us. A number of them have reached out to the community members that are active in their communities, to also assist them to get the paper-based assignments to the students in the communities.
So, as I mentioned earlier, there are varying opinions about our approach to going back to school. So let me ask you your perspective when you hear people comment or question that perhaps we are delaying a necessary step in getting our children back to school, where COVID numbers show that children aren't infected in large numbers, that they're not being hospitalized in large numbers. And so while there are new variants, we are seeing that children still remain in a group that is fairly protected. Do you think this approach is too safe?
I don't know if we can say too safe when we're talking about children. But what we can say is that starting today, we aren't delaying any longer. Our delay was for the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine. The fact that we have over 24,000 12 to 17-year-olds who have been vaccinated is an indicator that we were right to wait. And now the moving forward will be entirely it's going to really be a community decision.
Yeah.
This is not a case where the ministry will mandate at this point to say everyone must open and everyone must return tomorrow. This is a case now where we are saying we all have a part to play in this. We want to make sure that as the Ministry of Education that we are doing our part. But we also need to make sure that everyone else does their part. So our managing authorities and our proprietors, our school administrators, our teachers, our parents, I think never before has it been so clear that school and education really, really need for everyone to work together in order to make it work properly. So now, moving forward, the decision to return is going to really include all of us.
Yeah. I know that there is close collaboration between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health has data to say very clearly where the outbreaks are.
Yes.
Based on communities, based on cities and towns, and based on districts. Has it been considered to move into a zoning process? In other words, if Toledo has their cases under control, allow Toledo to return to school. If Belize City has an outbreak, or Belize District, has an outbreak, Belize District must continue with hybrid or distance learning.
That is absolutely what we're looking at. We actually have on our new MOECST website, we have a hub that has all of the data. We have synced it to the Ministry of Health and Wellness so that we are able to now get data from them. And it's going to be, I think, a great tool for those who choose to use it, of course, because, you know, that's the only way tools are actually effective. But it's going to be a site where people can log in and see not only vaccination data or COVID number data, but also school data. So you can see which schools have been given the green light, which schools are open for on-site or for hybrid or for, you know, whatever it is, which schools remain closed. And I think using the hub and using the data will enable us as we move forward to make informed decisions. So we can say exactly, as you gave the example just now, if we have in one particular district where the numbers are lower, that yes, schools can continue there, right? And if you have an area that is more of a hot spot, then no, those schools must be closed for on-site or face-to-face learning.
When do you plan to move into this?
Well, it's going to, starting now, the data, as I said, is active on the hub, right? And so now that we are actually giving schools the option to return for on-site, we can do that. Before it was everyone was, you know, operating with distance learning.
Yeah.
But now we are going to be able to begin to do that sort of monitoring. It doesn't make it easy, but I think it makes it safer.
And it also incentivizes, I think, people taking extra precaution, I would hope.
Well, I'd hope.
I wanted to move the conversation a bit forward, if you'd allow me, just to look at how you take this time to also plan for when school is resumed across the country, whether it's face-to-face or hybrid. We know that there are severe educational gaps that have taken place for all students, one. But then there is a greater disparity for those who have had even access to those who have had the full complement of support for their education process. I mean, you have to plan now because we know it's going to happen. So what's happening while all the decisions are being made about reopening schools?
Well,
Devices.
Yeah?
well, we're working on several different things. One thing obviously is we just on Friday completed a new survey of secondary schools to show more updates for gaps with devices. Because we know obviously we're really moving toward a time when we're gonna need to say that every student should have a device. This is, it's a challenge, but it really is a reality. So it's one of the things that we're looking at, how we are going to meet that gap. And we have a plan in place for that. As Chief mentioned earlier, the academic work that has been done with the reduced learning outcomes, with the reduction of subjects in the schools, is not a matter of watering down what you're teaching. It's more a matter of making sure that you're focused on what is most important.
Yeah.
We have begun the work of putting in place diagnostic testing at all levels in the primary school, so that we are able to determine really where the gaps are.
Yeah.
Looking at the core subject so that we can see, and I think that is going to be a key in helping teachers to learn how to meet the gaps for different students. One of the things that we're also looking at very seriously is how we are going to address the psychosocial needs of the students.
Yes.
We all know the toll
Yes.
that the past 18 months has taken on our young people. We know that the few counselors and social workers that we have in our country are overwhelmed because of the sheer volume of need. We know that we don't have enough. We need more school counselors. We need, actually, I think every school should have a counselor.
Yeah.
You know,
From primary school level.
Primary school, you know, up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You need to have counselors. And so one of the things that we are looking at actively is ways, because there are a lot of issues. There have been issues in the past where I think counselors have been treated more like teachers.
Or it's the nice teacher that becomes the counselor.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, and a number of them, you know, we don't have the type of assistance, academic assistance that we can provide to them. And again, it's looking at our regulations for our counselors, because they must teach, and it's time for us to revisit whether that's the best thing to do. And definitely it's not. The support that they can provide and that they're providing, because if you go on Facebook for the individual schools, you will see how much emphasis is being placed on psychosocial support for the students.
What about training teachers for what we know will be behavioral issues going back into classroom? Parents are reporting that children are regressing.
Yes.
They've not interacted with other children for a very long time. And we don't even know the extent of challenges that children maybe have been facing or witnessing at home.
We have started using the Teacher Learning Institute platform, the TLI. We've started to offer some courses that will be able to give teachers that sort of training, yes. And that's a platform we intend to continue using. So while we work on the issue of counselors at large, how do we address counselors, their working realities, right? And we also look at how do we train more of our young people. You know, what can we do? Are there short-term courses, medium-term, long-term? What are our realities there? We do also utilize the TLI to give in-service training, if you will, to the teachers who, we already know that teachers are counselors, right? We know this, but I think that the needs are magnified now, and I think that the closer we come to having everyone back in school, even if it's in small pockets at a time, the more the teachers themselves are going to be needing support on different levels.
And one argue, however, that as it stands, teachers have a mountain of responsibility in terms of preparing lesson plans, in terms of getting their classrooms ready, in terms of overseeing the number of kids per classroom. And so asking them to go an extra mile in terms of learning how to deal with students in a counseling setting would perhaps be asking a lot of them, or a lot from them?
This isn't giving them more, this is helping them, because they're going to do it anyway.
Okay.
It will happen anyway. Anyone who's been in the classroom knows this, right? This happens to you anyway. So
you have students who confide in the teachers, or you have students who exhibit certain behavior, and the teacher has to automatically spring into action.
Have to figure out, you know, what's happening with this one. How do I respond? If this happens in the middle of my classroom, what do I do? Right? So really, our doing this is just trying to add more tools to their toolbox.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, shouldn't this be something that is required before they go back to the classroom? Because we know children are not going to be the same after this experience. So what's important is that teachers don't come with the same disciplinary actions or behavioral expectations after children have been traumatized for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And the different courses they're taking through the TLI or any other provider allows them now to meet the criteria for the 120 hours to maintain their license. You know, in the past it was difficult because we offer those in the summer and you had to travel from a district to another depending on the course you would want to take or the professional development you were interested on. Now it's accessible. Now it's easier for them to sign up. It's easier for them to maintain. We are trying our best to offer those after school hours so it does not necessarily interfere in their work weekday. And this is, a number of them has said, you know, I feel better now that I can maintain my license. I can continue to improve myself professionally.
Yeah.
And more of what we're offering are things along these lines.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just the academic, you know, about teaching one particular subject anymore. Now, a lot of the course offerings are more in the
Post-pandemic.
Post-pandemic era, you know, how to teach, how to survive, sort of a train of thought.
So we have some questions from our viewers. We want to get these in very quickly if you'd allow us. So Roxana Pineda wants to know, if the school decides to open and parents don't want to send their child, will they be penalized for it?
No.
Okay. And Philip Baltazar wants to know, 50% of a community is not ready to open up. Is it advisable to still reopen?
Well,
it all depends on the school.
on the school, yeah.
So the school has to make that decision.
Because maybe there's 50% who don't want to, but there's 50% who want to. And the thing is that if this is a community where online has not been working well, where parents have generally not been supportive with the picking up of the packages, you know, there's the students really have, everyone knows that the students are really not performing, they haven't been able to engage properly, then maybe it is a community where they should. And remember, the schools have the option. So the schools can say that it would be either this group of students or this class of students, and they can say, we're going to take those who are the most high risk. We are going to take those that we know have special learning needs. We are going to take those that we know, for example, are struggling readers. You know, so it doesn't need to be something where, you know, they would have everyone back at the same time.
Okay, here's a critical question. Faye wants to know, would they consider regular testing for teachers and students for those who do on-site?
Oh, sorry, COVID testing.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought assessment. Well, there's, the teachers are supposed to be showing the proof of vaccination or regular test anyway. I don't think we're at a place where, I know there are other places in the country where, for example, every Tuesday you get a COVID test, you know, and I don't think that we are there yet, simply because I don't know that our health services are yet able to provide that.
Okay.
You know, but it's definitely something to think about, I think, as we get closer to bringing everyone back.
So this person wants to know, will students be in school all day? Will it be normal school hours?
No. For some schools it's half day, for some schools it may be up to 1 o'clock with breaks in between, and if there's any like lunch or recess, they're staggered. Staggered recess. It's not all the kids would be at the same time, you know, on the campus, depending on the size of the school. Some schools, based on their size, probably only 15 students can fit or 11 can fit. So it all depends on the size of the school.
This person wants to know, can management demand a principal to open the school?
It has to be both agreeing. No.
Okay, and who is going to give counseling to the teachers?
Well, I think counseling services are, as we said earlier, at a premium right now. You know, we do recognize that we don't have enough counselors going around. I think that our teachers, I would like to think that they know where counseling services can be found. I know for a fact that some teachers engage with their school counselors, you know, that the school counselor provides services to staff members as well as to students. And I think that if we do have a teacher who in particular needs counseling services, that I really want to encourage that person to look out for help. We are not in a place right now where we can yet say, this is the school counselor that is assigned to this school. We are working toward that because we recognize the need. But definitely we want to be sure that we say to anyone who needs help, please do reach out. You know, there are counseling facilities. They're in the human development ministry. There are counselors available. So if anyone needs help, please do reach out.
And there's a psychiatric nurse practitioner in every public health clinic across the country.
Yes.
So somebody wants to know, I know private schools may be ready. What about government schools? Are they really ready?
A number of schools.
Some of them are.
Ready.
Some of them are, yeah.
Okay, so that's I think we'll cut off with some of the questions there. And we know we only have it for a couple of minutes more. I wanted to shift it ever so slightly to another issue to get you to weigh in. The recent passing of Dian Gabriel, not passing, the murder of Dian Gabriel that we saw last week has left the country traumatized over losing young people, children, in this way. And we were commenting before, I know you have a history with SJC, seeing a casket going into the compound is not anything we could have ever imagined having to experience. So there are many different conversations taking place about what needs to be done to address crime. And a part of it is looking at keeping children in school. So I want to bring that to you now and ask several questions. What's the level of collaboration with the Ministry of Education, and what are your thoughts on mandatory education up to the age of 18?
Well,
we did a survey and consultation with age up to 16. It was not 18, and the results of it is that it's resoundingly yes, we should increase it to 16. We had a conversation though that at some point we have to reach a universal secondary education, and that's the way to go instead of just raising it, because then you might have kids that might remain in primary school with that age rather than helping them to move forward. So definitely that's on discussion. It is a consideration that we can revisit the age of 16 to 18, but the answer to that would be universal secondary education.
Yeah, instead of putting an age on it. So every child must have, at the very least, a high school degree.
Yes.
Yeah. But can we afford it? And what will it take?
It may be a price that we need to pay. It may be that important. You know, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Human Development, the Ministry of Home Affairs with the police, and the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Those four ministries are particularly interested and actually have begun efforts to work together, recognizing that we will not solve this problem tomorrow. We will not solve this problem by, you know, putting more boots on the ground. As Minister Karim Musa has said, you know, we need to begin to work toward it though. And it's going to be a deliberate, concerted effort that we're going to need to make. And a part of it is going to be on our part, really touching a lot of the things we've said already. It's going to be keeping our young people in school. It's going to include making sure that we have options that are open for them. We absolutely need to make sure that our technical and vocational education institutes are revitalized and are offering courses that are suitable. You know, we need to continue to work on our adult and continuing education centers. We, from the perspective of education, must do our part, and we are absolutely committed to doing that. I really want to commend, for example, the C.E.O Center for Employment and Training, where early on they let us know that they had 100% of their staff and 100% of their trainees vaccinated, because they recognize how important it is for them to go back.
Yeah.
You know, we recognize that this education is key to moving forward and to really getting us through this extremely challenging time. And this is part of why also from the Ministry of Education, we've started the Education We Rise, Together We Rise, the Education Upliftment Project for those 4 Southside schools.
Yeah. So Prime Minister Briceño announced that on Independence Day.
Yes.
Can you give us more details about this plan and its timeline?
Well, our work has started on the ground right now with the 4 particular schools, the government schools in the South Side: Maud Williams, Sadie Vernon, Gwen Lizarraga, and Excelsior. And our goal is really to be able to boost the enrollment, to develop the capacity of those 4 schools, so that we can really bring them together we rise, so that we will be able to bring them up to a place where we can all be proud of, where the students will be proud to attend, the schools will be offering courses that will be suitable, courses they're going to want to take, you know, for the technical high schools, and really just do our best for those schools and the students in those areas.
And those 4 schools, are they ready to reopen as yet?
No.
No.
Not yet.
There's a lot more work to do.
And they're also identified as ones with low enrollment or low
Yes.
re-enrollment as well.
Yes.
And dropout.
And
Yes,
dropout.
the dropout rates are significant. There's a lot to be done. So we are really starting the groundwork there, and it has been really it's been touching to hear from the stories of the officers who are starting to work there. We recognize how much this is needed in those areas, and we're absolutely committed to doing our best for those schools. And I don't know that we have an end date, but as far as starting, we have already started the on-the-ground, the background work there.
Any final words? Of course, our parents are watching right now, and as I said, they're varying ends of this discussion. Some saying let's do it now, some saying let's wait till we're absolutely safe. What do you say as the ministry representative?
Oh, we want to say that it is important for us to think of the children, and that we take this one day at a time. There's no one size fits all, and so we encourage parents to have the conversation with their family, with their children, with their teachers, with their school, before they make the decision, if that's the decision they need to make for the children to return or for their kids to return to school.
We know that no plan is perfect, and we recognize that, you know, the emotions that are involved make this an even more challenging situation. Our goal is not to be inconsiderate of anyone's needs or anyone's position. Our goal is really to be able to present something that is balanced and safe, something that is going to provide us with a gradual, measured return to the classroom, simply because we recognize how much that is needed. It's needed across the country at all levels. And we really want to emphasize the fact that we believe in safety. We believe that as long as we continue to wear our masks properly and to have, you know, the facilities in place for washing and sanitizing, the watching of the distance, and to get vaccinated where we can, that we can return safely to the classroom.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming in to help us understand more about this phase of education where schools are allowed to apply for reopening for hybrid lessons. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll get the details of the 7th annual Leader Cast. So please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.